Welcome back to Carrot Corner Poker Education. In today's episode of Play and Rant, I lose my temper a little bit. I get a bit irate because the topic that comes up during this poker session while I'm trying to make some tough decisions is one that's really dear to my heart. A lot of my students fail at the game because of this kind of thinking. I know it's a big problem for a lot of you watching this as well. So let's make sure that you never do this again. Enjoy the video. It's time to open pocket fours on the button, which is the sheriff badge, because we're playing in the Saloon PokerStars theme. I haven't used this theme for a long time. Oh, we just timed out with the fours. What a start to the video. This is fantastic viewing. Fold fours in the button, guys. Please stop playing fours in the button. Fours are a trouble hand. Don't play trouble hands. Don't play jacks. Jam all in with jacks pre. Open jam so you don't have to play that trouble hand. That's the kind of content we're giving you here on Carrot Corner. Not really, but what I want to rant about today is something really important. Something that I'm absolutely sick of. A 3-bet the Jack 10 here. I am sick of people using insufficient logic and only looking at a small part of the game tree when recommending a play. Okay, Queen 8-4. So insufficient logic is basically when people say things like, I'm going to c-bet this flop to target hands like Ace-5 of diamonds. And it's like, okay, great. You want to target Ace-5 of diamonds. Fine. But that's only a small part of villain's range. This hand can check jam or it can bet. I'll go ahead and bet this time. Villain can jam sometimes here, and we probably have to call with the massive amount of outs that we have, although it's close. Both plays are pretty good there. But after this absolutely insanely disorganized start to the video, let me get to the point here. When we look at a hand, in fact, let's use the hand we just played as an example. People use insufficient logic all the time because it's easier. They want to just focus on one small part of what's going on because that's easier to process, but it's not how poker works. The way to get good at poker is to understand that things have a baseline EV in theory and then that they might be a bit different in practice and that you can deviate sometimes. But the solver does the heavy lifting for you. Game theory, the Carrot Poker School, courses like this show you what the case should be and how the game really works, what the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of the game are. So in this spot here, for example, we can c-bet small on the flop, we can c-bet big on the flop, we can check. These lines are all roughly theoretically equivalent. And the reason for that is that different good things happen in each in the game tree and different bad things happen in each. And it's no coincidence that they're the same EV because game theory is set up in a way that everyone is trying to make everyone else indifferent where possible. Not with every hand in their range, but by and large, we're trying to do what we can to not give villain any exploits, any way of taking advantage of our strategy. That said, we also want our strategy to be objectively good and EV maximizing for us. So here, when we bet small, we get less fold equity against pocket sevens. Pocket sevens probably doesn't fold as often, if at all, to this sizing as it does to 75% pot or 60% pot or something like that. In the branch of the tree where villain has pocket sevens, it's better to bet bigger. Does that mean that it makes any sense to say, let's bet big to target sixes and sevens? No. It makes absolutely no sense to say, let's bet big to target sevens. Why does that not make sense? Well, consider the following thought experiment, the following analogy. This morning, I was making coffee and my girlfriend was getting ready in the spare room and I came in to say hello just before I went up to my office to record this video and start work. When I went in there, I went in with the general assumption that everything was normal and that she didn't have a headache because she doesn't get headaches very often. Maybe she does sometimes, well, she does on occasion, but it's pretty rare for her to wake up in the morning with a headache. I don't remember the last time that's even happened. So I didn't go in there saying, hey, I got you some painkillers to target the times that you have a headache. Because that's a really small part of her getting ready in the morning range, having that headache. It doesn't really happen. So would it be a decent and sensible thing for me to do to go in with a couple of paracetamol or ibuprofen or some other painkiller and be like, hey, targeting your headaches, targeting the mornings where you have a headache here? It makes absolutely no sense. And like, it's not a terrible thing to do. And it's like, you can do that. Like, it's fine. It's an okay play, I guess, to go in there with a couple of painkillers, but it's a bit weird. It's probably slightly minus EV because it makes her think that I've gone insane. And it's not good to send your significant other off to work with the feeling that their partner may have gone insane. That's not really great. The point is that you don't do that in life. You don't target really small, unlikely occurrences. You don't target like random parts of potentiality like that. You go with what's most common. You play against the full range. the full range of states that she's going to be in the morning. Most of them are just normal, a bit tired, don't really want to go to work, but here we are, this is life. That's most of them. Some of them are things like, oh, I have a headache, or like some other like weird thing that's going on, or the cat's been sick on the floor and I have to clean it up, and there are other things that can happen there. But if you follow this analogy, the point is that we don't just take one branch of the tree and then play as if it's true. That's ridiculous. But people do this in poker all the time. I'm going to bet big to target sevens. I'm going to bet small to target ace 5 of diamonds. It's like, great, yeah, ace 5 of diamonds will fall to a small bet, and sevens might fall to a big one. But you don't know which of those villain has, and villain usually has neither of those. Play against the full range of hands. And against the full range of hands, there are pros and cons to betting bigger, betting smaller, and checking. A pro of checking is that when villain has pocket eights, I'm not putting money into the pot, although arguably with this hand I will anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But a pro of checking could be, I have jack 10, villain bets with a bad hand, and 9 comes on the turn and villain bluffs it off with king jack, and I win a whole stack. And if I bet the flop, they'd have folded the king jack of clubs and I wouldn't have won anything. So wasn't it great that I targeted king jack of clubs and the 9 coming and villain bluffing off by checking? I targeted all of those things. I targeted them, guys. Targeting is a load of BS. No, hold on a minute. Let's go full screen for this. Targeting is an absolute load of shit. And if you do it, you're being irrational. And here's the proof. If by targeting you mean villain's range is mostly X type of hand or solely X type of hand, so I'm going to target that, then really you're just playing against villain's range. Why are you saying targeting? Just play against your opponent's range. It's redundant and it's silly. If instead, which is more commonly the case, you mean I'm going to pick a small island of villain's range and play as if they have that hand, you are an irrational, silly poker player. You're not playing poker. You're doing dumb stuff that you've seen other people doing. Stop it. So this kind of insufficient logic, it causes so many problems in poker. It confuses the absolute shit out of people because they'll watch some streamer and the streamer's going to be like, let's take this node for example. I'm going to check here because I don't want to get jammed on if I bet. And it's like, okay, how often you get jammed on, like how big a part of the game tree that is a really, really important thing. We should also note that when you check, you don't actually close the action here, right? So it's not like you just guarantee free passage to the river like you would if you were in position. So it is a branch of the tree that I bet here, like this, and villain jams, and yeah, that really sucks. Like I have to figure out whether I can call it off. Either way, my equity's been severely reduced. I'm not beating any bluffs. I'm not beating any value. I'm just hoping I have the odds to like chase what's left of the hand of my outs here. That sucks. But it's not the full story, and you still have to zoom out and you still have to say, but when I bet, villain can also fold 9s, and they can also fold jacks, and they can also fold some other hand in their range that they want to fold. And those branches are really good for me. And if I hadn't bet, I wouldn't have got that fold equity, and I may have lost the pot against a hand like king queen that would have folded to my turn bet, or jacks that would have folded to my turn bet, or 8, 7, or 6s, or whatever it may be, or 5s. When I make this turn bet, I accept that there's a game tree that comes out from here. And some of the branches of that game tree, I would have wished that I hadn't bet on. And others I'd be really glad that I've bet on, like this one. Now that villain's folded, we can say that when this branch is true, whatever the hell they had here, king jack, or whatever the hell their hand was, probably not king jack, that's a gutter now, but you get the point. They had 5s, or they had 6s, or they had 9s or 10s, or something like that. I'm glad I bet, because if I didn't bet here, I might not have won this pot. They may have bluff caught me on the river. If I bluffed there, I may have given up river and just lost. So I can be glad that I won on this branch, but that doesn't mean that I can set out to be like, I'm going to bet to target 9s. What a load of shit. There's a full game tree. Know the base EV of your play, and then ask yourself if you have a reason to deviate. I didn't have a deviation here. I'm just playing solid poker. That's all you've got to do a lot of the time. Like sometimes you have a clear deviation, something you've got to do, some kind of exploit, like that fish is crazy aggro and the SPR is 1, so you better check your pocket aces on the flop. That's an exploit you've got to take because one branch is easily better than the other. But here it's like, man, there's pros and cons, and it's pretty close, and it's pretty unclear whether it's better to check jam or whether it's better to bet. And if you want to drive yourself completely insane by just picking out random little parts of villain's range and using them as if there's sufficient logic to say that one play is better than the other, then go ahead. But you're driving yourself insane and you're not getting to the bottom of how poker actually works. Okay, so back to the action here. This just happens all the time, this thing I'm ranting about today. It's so common. You know, I did a video recently and it was a really popular one actually, and it got more traction than usual. And when that happens, you do sort of, I guess you accrue some comments from maybe more beginnery players or like less serious, more casual players that don't usually consume your content or whatnot. And some of the comments I was getting on this video, man, because it reached a few more people than usual. Oh, I wouldn't bet trips on the flop. But you just flop trips, but like you shouldn't bet because loads of villains range is folding. This hand you can open or not, it doesn't matter. There are good branches, there are bad branches. Don't fold to target the times this guy has aces. Because look, he didn't. Look, he didn't have aces. So you shouldn't have targeted aces because he didn't have it. You get the point. And so this person was like, you know, don't c-bet trips on the flop because too much of villain's range is folding. It's like, okay, man, fair enough. So if I knew that villain had a hand that was folding, your argument would be really good. I shouldn't bet if I know villain's folding and I have massive equity because I can get value in other ways. But here's the catch. When villain has a hand that doesn't fold, when I flop trips, I start building the pot and I dramatically increase my EV by choosing to bet. So we don't just get to ignore the branches where villain doesn't fold and say, well, the ones where he folds are really bad, so we can't value bet our hand. Like, imagine if you just couldn't value bet trips. Like, imagine if you weren't allowed to value bet trips. Jack 9-7, not a great board for range. We lose nut advantage. Going to use small sizing. Villain donk bets. I don't think he gets to do this. Probably a weaker player. Going to just go ahead and raise. This range is really mergy. If we get 3-bet, I'm just going to fold. Like, I'm fine with that. But I'm going to go ahead and bump this up a bit because most of the hands that lead here are Jack 10, 10s, 10-9, you know, flush draw, pair plus draw, ace jack, king jack. I'm going to bet turn and probably jam a really safe run out. Yeah, I'm not letting you do this, bro. I just called him bro. That's so aggressive of me. It's so toxic. I hate when people say bro. And I just did it. Shame on me. What sizing do I want here? Something like this is fine. I'm going to bump this up again. I think this is just like still mostly going to be... There's going to be some 2-pair straights, stuff like this here, but it's mostly just going to be stuff that's like trying to not put that much money in the pot and thinks that leading is a good way to do it. I'm going to lead to target the times that villain doesn't raise and just calls. You see, it doesn't work. Got raised. Imagine how absurd it would be if you couldn't bet trips on the flop as the pre-flop raiser when you flop trips, like trip aces. Like imagine you couldn't make that c-bet that I made in the video entitled The Biggest Difference Between Pro Poker Players and Amateurs. Like imagine if you couldn't make that c-bet and that this person was right, and for my whole career I'd been wrong about the fact that you could c-bet trips and that you can bet frequently on ace x. Like imagine that was true. It's not. But why does it seem true to that viewer? It seems true because they've temporarily put on the blinkers and they're only thinking about one part of the game tree. You can raise or you can call here. Call this time based on the RNG. You can raise the flop here. Some backdoor straight draws, but they are bad with the presence of the queen. Like the 9 and 8 kind of runouts are not as good for us now. That said, I still think there's a little bit of raise here against range bet. We roll it like 25% of the time, otherwise we're going to call. The idea of this series, I hope you're enjoying it, is that we don't take the poker too seriously. We're not that bothered about how many spots we generate. So this hand is pretty frail against villain's bluffing range. Like villain pretty much always has 2 overs to this hand. This hand is either a mix or a pure fold. Blocker wise, it's quite good against under the gun because not many of their bluffs contain a 6 or a 7 here. We do obviously block some sets. I don't know that this is a pure fold actually. I think I should roll some call here. I think this is super close and break even. I roll the fold. Yeah, imagine if you are that person, like actually thinking that ace 10 can't c-bet on ace ace x because you've temporarily been blinded by the fact that you got a fold, or that you get a lot of folds, and you've just thought about that one element of the tree. You can't do that. So what I say to this person, and to people like this person who want to check the flop with trips, or think that it's the only play because you get a lot of folds, I say this. You, yes, you specifically, no one else, just you don't deserve to play the game. Other people do. But not you. That's what I say to them. King 9, this is a weaker player. Let's make it 7. This is a little loosey-goosey ISO 3-bet. It does reopen action, unfortunately, but call is going to be way more prevalent than jam with this archetype of player. Should I bet big to target ace-queen? Because if he has ace-queen, he's going to stack off. So let's just imagine he has ace-queen and play as if he has ace-queen. No! Bullshit! That, my friends, is nonsense. So instead, we're going to bet this size. And this size has some benefits and it has some downsides. One of the benefits of that sizing is that it causes more stupid stuff, like more like random spew from an unknown weaker player. One of the benefits is that it keeps some weaker hands in that a bigger bet blows out. But that doesn't make it better necessarily than a bigger bet or a check. Although I do think checking to this really passive looking player isn't the best. I'm going to size up turn here. There's a lot of stuff that can continue. I do only have king 9, but I do think that, well, now we chop with all other kings, which is probably a good thing. I think king 10 and king jack are way more prevalent than the other kings here, but mainly this is a spot where we jam because we have a lot of equity and we have enough to value jam. Yes, when villain has a queen, we will get called a lot, but that doesn't mean we're targeting a queen. That doesn't mean that that's the whole point of our play. Oh, villain folded. Shit. I guess we should have checked to target jack 10 because they have jack 10 a lot there, right? But we should have checked to target it. But here's the thing. Jack 10 suited is only 4 combos. does a hell of a lot of Queen X. And that's why it's a mistake to target Jack 10. It's a less prevalent hand than all those random pairs that someone might station us with. We've also just had a bit of aggressive interaction with this player. I don't remember if that was when I accidentally paused the video and ranted for 10 minutes or not, but maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but we've been involved with this player. They can just call you with lots of weaker stuff there. So when you're against a condensed range and it looks like a passive recreational opponent, which it did, you just go for value, generally out of position if you can, and in position. But you don't really slow play there. Yes, against certain parts of their range, it's way better to check, but you will see people comment on videos, you will see coaches, you will see all kinds of poker streamers say stuff like, so I'm going to check here to target Jack 10. Or target a misdraw. And it's just such a bad thought process because it just limits the game tree so unnecessarily. It's insufficient. The premise is insufficient for the conclusion. Don't know what I make of these chips, guys. Like, they're not really... The colors are a bit, I don't know, samey. They kind of like blend into one another. So villain folded there when I had kings. Guess I should have targeted his folding range by just flatting pre. You see the absurdity here. We can reduce this to absurdity really, really quickly. It's just nonsense. Playing 100 today, by the way, guys, if you're wondering what stake this is, because the 200 pool is not running. It had like 4 people in it. A bunch of regs like trying to set up the games. Gonna squeeze here. If we get jammed on by this player, it's a close decision, but I don't really care. I'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. We probably won't come to it. We might come to it. Yeah, facing jam is... I mean, it's probably a crying call for this amount of money, I would imagine. I don't think we can fold. Yeah, it's a call, but it's not a happy call. This player jams, it's a bit different. The spot's gross. Big bet seems out of the question. Seems like a really bad polarization mistake against the way villain's likely to play here. So I'm left with small bet, or I'm left with check. Check jam isn't like totally ridiculous, actually. Let's start with check. I don't mind check jamming 2 really big overs here because people are going to bet fold sometimes with a pair, and they're also going to do silly stuff from time to time. So villain has ace queen, ace jack. Like betting small here seems okay, betting bigger seems alright as well, checking seems alright, everything seems kind of reasonable here. I'm going to check, I'm just going to take the showdown value here. I think there's enough of it. It's going to be a little bit hard to realize though, this is the only problem. I think we have to fold now. This is the bad branch for checking, but the good branch for checking is that when this guy actually just has a really good hand, we just check fold and lose nothing. Like he may just have top pair or some slow play on the flop or something like that, or some jacks, although it's unlikely he doesn't bet flop with jacks. Annoying run out for ace queen. It's definitely okay to bet turn, especially against like unknown recreationals, because that is a bad branch, right, where we check and face bet, but there are upsides to checking as well. Like we lose less money against pairs that aren't folding when it goes check check, or when they bet and we fold, we lose less money. Downside, we don't realize equity. Upside, we don't lose as much money. Again, there's a trade-off, right? You got to try and see the whole game tree. 4 to 10, I guess this is okay. I guess this is the thing. I'm not going to cold call the queen jack here. So you guys get the picture. We are doing quite a bit of ranting today about this concept, but I think it's time that we put a stop to this lazy nonsense thought process of just imagining one part of the situation and then going with that. Okay, I think I've made my point. So we chill out and play some poker. Okay, 10-9 opposite here. I mean, you can do a bit of 3-bet bluff with this hand. You can do a bit of call. This 3-bet bluff is low frequency, but it's fine. So Grady, our exploitative course, where we have used mass data over millions upon millions of hands, and we have accumulated a ton of data on both how regs and recreational players play the game. We have found out all their imbalances across common spots, and we have covered every single common meaningful node on the game tree, showing you exactly how you should play it, giving the spot a rating between, well, the ratings get a bit out of hand. It was between 0 and 5. Then we found some spots were like so underbluffed that they had to have a -3 rating. We found other spots that had ratings like, I'm just going to call the 5-6 here while I'm ranting, give you guys something to watch. This is fine. We have a weaker player in the big blind, so I like calling here. I think this is a weaker player. It might not be, but he has a kind of big gap in the VPIP PFR. Yeah, this is a rubbish spot for 5-6, obviously. So Grady is going to be a revolutionary course. It's really going to transform the way you look at the game, because you're going to know how to deal with certain situations on an exploitative pool-based way. You don't need a player type breed. You know, if you do have one, great, but if you don't have one, that's fine. You're going to have a game plan already for where people are over bluffing, under bluffing, overfolding, underfolding, and it's so texture dependent, it's so positionally important. There's just so many factors that go into that, and we distill all of that in Grady and show you exactly how to play. If you don't have the Carrot Poker School, by the way, there's going to be a package where you can get all of it all at once. Ace Jack here with Ace of Spades, I think it's a very frequent bet. Probably not pure on Jack 10-10, like win trips as possible. If you are building a checking range here, you can probably check that hand on occasion, but yeah, frequent bet. So looking forward to that, and when we launch Grady, you'll be able to watch all of the content directly on carrotcorner.com, like a real website, guys. Not like me making a site out of WordPress anymore. We're actually becoming a real thing. We're becoming a real website. I always felt like a bit of an imposter in the tech front because I'm so bad at it. But luckily I have people working for me who are good at it. So Carrot Corner's going to be looking better and better as time goes on, I think. All right, 10-10-6. This is a board you can bet extremely frequently. You can bet range here. You can build some checks. You're going to build like some small checking range here. I think it's fine, but usually just going to be betting. King Queen is a probably more frequent check than average, but still some betting. Queen turn, I'm going to go for B75 or have any block. Do I want any block bet here? I don't think I want any block bet here. I think I just B75 or check here. You can do either. I'm going to B75 this time. Again, if you have like a read here that this is a really passive sticky player, you just bet. You just go bet, bet, bet. And if you feel like it's a bit more of a maniacal, volatile player, then check turn is good. I think on the Ace River, we're still doing all right. Like some of villains' ranges like Ace Jack and Ace 9 of clubs and Ace 4 of clubs and stuff. This is close now. I think block is fine here. Yeah, I think block is probably okay. If I get raised, I'll probably call because I don't think a naked ace is going to raise me. And King Jack is just a hand that we block and it's not that prevalent. Really? Small sizing though, man. Like trips would have raised by now, probably, most of the time. But what the hell are you turning into a bluff? And this is a recreational looking sizing. I was going to call, but it's 10 King. And King Jack, this is a really weird spot. Actually, with that timing and it just being a recreational looking player, I'm just going to fold. I was definitely considering calling there if that was a reg. Like if they took a bit of time and used a reggy sizing, I think that could be overbluffed. But the snap raise from an unknown who has used the exactly 3x sizing, it looks way more recreational, so I think we should actually fold. So who you're against, you know, player type there, I think is a really important deal. There's not a massive value range, but there's enough of one that, you know, King Jack off is a thing. Passive recreationals probably don't raise that much on the flop or turn. So yeah, I think that's a very good spot. So this hand here, honestly, like you can 3-bet the absolute hell out of a recreational player, blind versus blind, because they're not going to 4-bet you enough. This is the thing. So you can get away with just 3-betting all kinds of random hands. Like this one is fine. It's no problem. It's not even really a deviation to 3-bet this hand. But because they don't 4-bet, the EV of 3-betting just goes way up. Yeah, this is the donking guy again. Do I want to like keep attacking here? I don't think I want to reopen this time. We've got a bit of history where I've been doing that. I don't really want to face a 3-bet. I think call in position is my preference here. I think it's going to be higher EV just given the dynamic. I think my fold equity is pretty bad against this guy. Although they did fold last time, I'm just getting the sense that on this board, my fold equity won't be very good. Now, of course, we're over the moon about life. We're going to go pretty big. Jam river on almost every card. Hopefully they just jam 2-pair or whatever. It's going to happen a lot as well. Oh, they do fold again. I think the donking range there is just almost anything from this player, just like most of the things that a normal human would check to the aggressor, they just lead like third pot with, which is a really, really bad strategy, by the way. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please, please stop only looking at a small part of the game tree. Please stop targeting. Please stop trying to simplify poker. It's like poker for 5-year-olds, man. Let's just like ignore 95% of what's going on so that we can make it digestible. It might be tempting, but it's not a good way to go. Embrace the complexity. Look at some game theory solutions. Understand why they are what they are. Look at the bigger picture. Zoom out. Try to see the reality of what's going on. It's not just about the thought you're having. Your thoughts aren't describing the entire situation. They're just thoughts that are coming and going. So don't jump so heavily on board with them at the expense of the rest of the game tree. That really is what we're saying today. Let's set our next big blind. Play a final orbit here. Play a bit of Queen Jack. Queen Jack action. Not much going on. That cigar's still going. 12.7 BB stack in the big blind. No thank you with the 10-7. Good to notice these things. So if you want to be a poker player, you've got to think about poker. Not just one very small part of it at a time. Ask yourself next time you have a thought, is that thought about the full spot that I'm in? Is it really about the deliberation between betting the turn and checking the turn? Is it telling me which of those lines is better? Or am I just citing one reason for one line at a time and ignoring everything else? It's the easiest trap to fall into. It's the most destructive habit. Even established players do it. There's a load of bad coaching out there where you'll see people do it. Stay the hell away from it, because once this habit sinks in, you're done for, man. Your thought process is ruined forever, and you should quit the game. On that happy note, check out carrotcorner.com for more poker education. Bye for now.